All right, so we'll be starting in 5, 4.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this Ask the Expert session. This is for developer tools for building apps on Microsoft Teams and enabling app adoption. We have got our speakers for the session, Brian, Emily, Karthik, and many other SMEs to answer any questions you have. And I am your moderator for this session, Vaibhav Agrawal. So this is Microsoft Digital Event Code of Conduct. So we can enable a welcoming and safe session today. Before we take any questions you have, quickly some housekeeping items to cover on how you can best engage with us here. You can use the chat box to ask any questions you have, or you can post anonymously, or you can always use your name. Questions will appear to all of us once they are approved, and you can upvote your favorite questions using a thumbs up. All the speakers and SMEs experts will answer the questions here verbally. We will also do our best to answer the most popular questions first. So this session will be recorded. Please don't record the session at your end. And to help our moderators, please do not spam the chat here. With that, this topic is covered across 3 different personas, across the developer persona on how you can develop apps with the Teams development tool suite, with IT admin as how IT admins can help in driving higher app adoption, and then the end users on how users can easily discover, adopt, and purchase any apps. So with that, we can open to any questions you have here. I'm looking at our live event Q&A. And as we start, why don't we start with Karthik, who focuses on our developer persona on one of the key questions I hear always from the developers on, do you need to use the toolkit and developer portal to build a Teams app? Karthik.
Hi, Vaibhav. Thank you for that. That's a very important question. The short answer is no, you don't. The reason for that is let's go into a little bit about what exactly makes a Teams app a Teams app. A Teams app is not a client app like an Android app or an iOS app where there's source code running on a client device. A Teams app is a web app. You can build it just like you would build any other web app that you would build and host into a cloud hosting solution like Azure or Heroku or even localhost. And then what you will do is take all of that content, package it up via a manifest file. This is a JSON file that describes your app. What is it called? What are the icons for the app that will be displayed in the Teams client? Where is the content coming from? And that manifest file gets ingested by the Teams client when you install it. So these 2 tools that we've built, the Toolkit for Visual Studio Code, and the Developer Portal, they're there to help you build your web app and then package it so that the Teams client can install it. But they're not mandatory. You're free to go ahead and build your Teams web app however you'd like and package up the manifest and icons in an app package however you'd like as well. But we do believe that the Toolkit and Developer Portal are the best ways for you to go and build a Teams app because we've added lots of goodness to help you overcome some of the problems that you'll encounter and challenges that you'll encounter as you're developing your Teams app. I hope that was a helpful answer to that question.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot, Karthik. That was very helpful. And I know you had a fantastic demo in the session, but somehow many of us were not able to see the full demo. So we will ensure that we can share the right demo and the recording would be available for you to watch later on.
That's right. Thank you, folks, and apologies for the technical difficulties. Tomorrow's session will have a fixed version of the live coding demo with the Zoom issue resolved, and that video will also be available for you to watch at your own time and leisure.
Yeah, so everyone feel free to put in your questions here in the chat window. I see another question here on one of the biggest challenges we have with Teams app. Oops, it shows in the published. Just give me a second. Yeah, so from Richard, I see a question on one of the biggest challenges we have with Teams app development is caching. When we deploy new apps, our users still get the old version of the app. Do you have any suggestions on how to solve this problem? So, yeah, go ahead, Karthik, please.
I'm trying to unmute. Okay. Can you all hear me? Okay, great.
You muted again, Karthik.
Okay. I'm unmuted. That's a great question. I have a follow-up question to that. What type of a Teams app are you building right now? Is it a tab-based app or a personal app, or is it a bot? I ask because there are two answers depending on the type of app you're building. And I might pass it over to Alan, who will be able to answer this better than I would. Okay, let me just pull up the live Q&A to see if Richard has a response for me. But in the meantime, Alan, would you like to, can you speak to a little bit about how best to overcome the caching issue for at least a tab app?
Oh, right. Yeah, for the tab app, that's kind of tough because Teams does, it's kind of like, Teams is kind of like a browser in a way where it does cache the latest so that's the thing. It's kind of like when you're deploying it, you have to be able to make a change enough maybe on your page. Just think of it as like if you developed on using a CDN before, where you push things up to the CDN, and sometimes you change something with the URL to add maybe like a version number or a date or something like that to say, oh, CDN, this is actually something new. So a lot of the tricks of the trade is to kind of add something to your URL to break that caching. There are some other ways. If you want to contact us afterwards, I can put you in contact with our tabs apps team, and they might have some other ways as well. And they are working on ways to fix this because it is kind of a common issue.
Yep, thanks a lot, Karthik and Ellen. The next one I see here is anonymous as, can you build an application in Teams, but someone within the org can still use that app without having to log into Teams if they don't want to? So how someone can use an app for Teams outside Teams, I guess, is the question here.
I got it. So the question is, how do I build a Teams app and access it without logging into Teams itself? So if that is the question, and maybe we misunderstand the question, but if that is the question, what I mentioned earlier was that a Teams app, in most cases, is a web app. So you can expose it in Teams, but you don't have to. You can build an app that's just a website and access it via a browser. Of course, you'll be losing out on some of the in-context goodness you get by making an app available in Teams. But for example, if you were to build a website that helps you send a kudos type notification to one of your colleagues, you're free to do that on the Microsoft stack and just make it a website itself. But I think you probably will want to include some sort of logging experience if you're going to be exposing any rich enterprise data to your end users.
Hey, Karthik,
Awesome.
I have an anecdote here. We had customers in the healthcare industry set up these kiosks with a Teams application where in the patient room there would be a device with the Teams call permanently engaged so that doctors can do rounds kind of digitally. In that case, these are people who are essentially using a Teams app, not being logged into Teams. To make that work, they used like a service account. So someone had to pre-log in the client. But if you want to consume the app inside Teams, the only way is to log in somehow, either with a kiosk account, a service account, or somebody's identity. Or use the suggestion Karthik mentioned, which is basically not serve it within Teams. If you just want to use a browser, that can work.
Does if the person who posted that question has any more context for us, I think that would help us understand this a little bit better, unless if we didn't answer your question sufficiently. Thank you, Xenia. That's a great anecdote.
Yeah, fantastic. Those were great questions. Please keep them coming. And I know another one I hear across from developers for Brian, especially here, on how developers can think of IT admins as their customers and not just focus on end users. Because a lot of times as IT admins will hold the key to make the app available to the end users. So Brian, if you can share more on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Vaibhav. So yeah, definitely you want to consider as you're building apps that end users aren't the only person who's going to be engaging with your apps. Admins themselves, you can think of the role of admins in two different ways. Traditionally, you can think of admins as the gatekeepers for your apps themselves. So this is where they play roles like if you are creating a custom app for your organization, this is where the admin will need to review your app and make sure that it's appropriate for the tenant and so on. So this is where we're designing capabilities such as the admin notifications at the design of these custom apps. Another traditional gatekeeping role is from a security compliance standpoint, many customers, many admins are very, it can be very cautious about adopting apps and potentially the impact that they'll have to their tenant. This is where having perspectives on security, ensuring that you're handling your customers' data safely, and ensuring that you're reducing the potential for it to be exfiltrated, and so on. These are practices that you'll need to ensure to know that you're making your apps trustworthy for admins to adopt. We do have more information on how you can design these secure and compliant apps. If anyone's interested, I definitely have another one of my colleagues here who can talk about one of the programs to help that out. Now, beyond just a traditional gatekeeping role, we do view admins as drivers for app adoption as well. So that's why you've seen features like enabling graph connectors for apps. This is where admin, if you build your kind of graph APIs, you can unlock some of the capabilities that we talked earlier, such as e-discovery and search. These are capabilities that your admins, once they see that your app is available, these are highly desirable to admins. They will want to enable these capabilities because ultimately you're making your app more trustworthy and more accessible. So you do want to ensure that kind of these capabilities, such as the graph connector, unified deployment, which I talked about, having a central location for admins to deploy your apps, ensuring that you're taking these options in Partner Center to ensure that you're creating kind of these bundles of your apps so that a single admin can go ahead and deploy it to all multiple surfaces. This is certainly another area that your admins can be a driver for your app's usage as well. And finally, we talked about the ability for admins to customize and configure your apps. This is another role that admins can play. They recognize that the apps that are kind of seen, that are branded under the own company logo and so on, are really the ones that have higher adoption. There's more trust from their users. So understanding that admins can kind of enable these capabilities for their end users are things that we would recommend you taking advantage of, so that you can kind of expand your customer base, not from just from your end users, but to your admins as well.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Brian. Those were great points on how admins can further activate and promote apps. Karthik, I see the previous one was also more related to Power Apps, and I see another one on Power Apps as what are the main differences and advantages with developing with Power Apps with teams with Premium versus the regular license. And the previous one was also related to Power Apps when some users did not have access to Teams and they were trying to use the Power Apps.
Right, I saw the second response come in. So this was a follow-up to the earlier question about how to build a Teams app and give access to users who may not have access to a Teams account. So the person would like the benefits of leveraging Dataverse and provide that goodness to users who may not have a Teams account. I'm not sure if this is a scenario that we fully support, but maybe I just don't understand it well enough yet. What I will say is you can find either myself, Alan, Xenia, Adrian Hall on this call and reach out to us via LinkedIn or directly on Teams. It's not difficult to track down our work email addresses, and we can have a call to learn more about it. If you happen to be an MVP, all of us are active in the Teams MVP channel to hear about this in more detail. And about the Power Automate Premier question, I'm afraid that is not my area of expertise. If there are any Power Automate experts here at the session, that would be a great question for you guys to jump on.
And I think, add to that, there are many capabilities of Power Apps which are available as part of the Teams license itself, which will be the standard, the regular one. But if you want to use any premium connectors, like outside third-party data on how easily you can bring that into Teams, and there are some data size limitations, that's where the premium license, like ability to connect with some part of Dynamics and those third-party connectors, that's where to have more enhanced value add capabilities is you should be looking for premium license. But many of the basic capabilities to get started on Power Apps, you have those available right within Teams. So with that, I see another one from Richard on, do you have any news on changing which tab is default landing page for a team? Many of our customers want the app as the default tab.
Hey, Richard. So that's a great question. I've heard this request before. We don't have this on our roadmap. What we do have, though, is the ability to determine what will be the default landing page for your team's app. So, for example, if your app leverages, let's just say, a bot and a tab, you can specify which UI the user will see first when they log into your app. But your specific request is one that I've heard before, and I'll relay that to the feature team that is who are the owners of that space, because this is something that I've heard multiple times, and it makes a lot of sense just hearing it right now.
And to add to that one, I would say we have another feature as app configuration, which provides that ability for admins to configure on what should be the default landing page. So if beyond you as a developer, if you want to provide that capability to customers, that admins can decide for a specific store app, for every customer, if that default tab may vary. We have that feature available, and I will share the preview form which we have to get more details from you on how we can onboard you on our preview program here. And with that, are there any other new questions? I don't see any new one here. Meanwhile, let's move to Emily. Like from the store experience, what I hear a lot from some of the developers on, there are so many surface areas in Teams. So how do I know once I create an app in which all those different surface areas, flyouts, those apps would appear?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Like we show in the presentation as well, we're constantly finding out new ways to surface your app within the context of Teams. So right now we already have the one on app bar, on tabs, on message extension, and we just added one on meetings. And all of these, we are taking the work out of developers. So once you develop, we make sure based on your app capability and scope, we place your app in the right place. So for example, if you build an app that's group scope as well as personal, then we'll make sure it shows up in the tab gallery as well as all the personal surfaces that we provide. So things like the personal flyout on the app bar as well as the message extension, the compose bar. So essentially, once you define what capability you are building for the app in the manifest, we take care of the rest for you. We plug into every surface that's suitable and to give you the maximum discoverability there. And we're also constantly looking out for new services to surface your app, and for you, essentially, that's all free. Once we find any new services, your app will just work seamlessly on that.
Awesome, that's fantastic, Emily. Thanks a lot. And I see another one from Fernando on, does exist a report for the customer where they can follow the usage of custom apps? I think, Brian, if you want to take that up.
Hey, Fernando,
About,
I have a. Actually, I might have a follow-up question for that. So, Fernando, when you say is there a report where a customer can follow the usage of custom apps? Who would be the customer in this case? Would they be a developer developing the app? Would they be a business owner? Just curious who that person is.
Yeah, and if you are referring to the, so like, yeah, from two perspective on, I can probably take up from the admin side. So in Teams Admin Center, we currently have the app usage report, which covers the Microsoft apps and third-party apps. So if you have a customer contour, so the admins can see the usage of those Microsoft and third-party apps. And we are working to enable for custom applications as well. So if you have any line of business apps, the contours of admin would be able to look at the usage of those apps in next few months. Karthik, if you want to add anything on the developer side.
Yep. So to add to that, all the goodness that Vaibhav just discussed for the admin portal, we're also lighting up as well in the developer portal. You may have seen that in preview in Satya's keynote today. But basically our MVP will be usage numbers for apps that are published to the Teams store with LOB app usage following behind, directly from the developer portal for Microsoft Teams.
Awesome. Thank you, Karthik. And I see another question here from Richard on, in the future, do you think apps will be able to customize the file tab? For example, add the option send as email in the 3 dots menu. Right now, we have to build our own Teams file explorer.
Sorry, Vaibhav, would you mind repeating that question?
Sure.
Let me see if I can find it.
That's in the published section now. So will the apps be able to customize the file tab?
I see. I do believe that what you're describing is actually possible today. And Richard, feel free to respond back to me directly. But I think it might be possible to do this via one of the existing Microsoft Graph APIs. I believe we do have an API that enables you to write files to a shared OneDrive folder. And all of the files tab for a team is actually just a OneDrive folder that is owned by that particular user group or team. You'll just have to dig around a little bit into the details of that permission scope.
I actually have a follow-up point on that too. So Richard, it seems like you want to kind of similar to the message action we provide. You have the ... and you can build your own. You're wondering if we're going to provide the similar thing for the file tab, right? You write something and it's going to be surfaced there. So let me know if that's the right understanding. But I actually heard this from a couple other people as well. That's a really interesting one. I know we kind of looked into it a little bit, but so far we don't have like immediate plan, but it's in the backlog that we're looking at. But this is a really good one, so thank you for surfacing that up.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily and Karthik. And till we get the next one here, another question I have for you, Karthik, on like those were great new enhancements on developer portals and toolkits. So if you can elaborate more on when developers should use the toolkit, and what about those developers who rather prefer to work from a command line utility?
Okay, sounds good. Was your first question, when developers should use the toolkit?
That's right.
Okay, so the toolkit is what you will be using as you're writing the source code that is powering your team's app experience. So if you would like to build, let's just say, for argument's sake, a Node.js server to serve content to your team's app, you can do that from the toolkit. And the toolkit ships with this awesome new SDK, the Teams Framework SDK, that you can think of as really the backend sister SDK to the Teams client SDK. And that backend SDK, the Teams Framework SDK, is, you can think of it as an interface from which you can retrieve rich data from Microsoft Graph or provision your Azure services a lot more easily than you would today, where you'd be going into the Azure portal and creating app registrations from scratch and plugging in the necessary parameters into your source code to make all of that run. So please go to the developer portal, Teams Developer Toolkit website, download it, try it out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at just how easy it is now to get a Teams app built that contains very useful data to you as someone who is a member of your organization.
Hey,
if
Karthik,
you are,
sorry to interrupt. Just 2 notes on that there. So all the commands and capabilities of the Toolkit IDE extension are now available on the command line using the Teams Effects CLI interface that we just published. So you can do all the great stuff Karthik mentioned about creating your app with AAD or deploying it to Azure or publishing to Teams. You can do all that from the Teams Effects CLI command. You can install it from npm-g and access it from your system. The right time to use the CLI is if you prefer, you can use it, but also when you're trying to set up your CI/CD process. That's why we gave you the CLI tool, so you can automate all of these steps. But if you don't like the terminal, then all the same features are available as UI elements or commands from VS Code and Visual Studio.
And ditto to what Xenia said for the developer portal. You don't have to use it if you don't want to use it, but if you'd like to take advantage of having your app registered centrally with the Microsoft Teams app service, you can do so from a new Microsoft Graph API that we'll be exposing in the very near term. So you're going to be able to register apps with the Teams developer portal service, update the configuration, etc.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Karthik. And we are at the last 3 minutes mark. If you have any other questions, please feel free to drop in there. Meanwhile, so Brian and Emily, you talked about the purchase experience, and I'm wondering on what developers need to do to enable the various purchase methods for their paid subscription offers, if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think what we can do is we can delegate to Christian to speak to some of this.
Yeah, so from a developer perspective, the first thing that you need to do is to ensure that you have transactable offers created in Partner Center, and you have done the integration with the Partner Center fulfillment APIs. Once this is published and you are linking the offer and your publish ID in the Teams app manifest, the purchase experience will show up then in the Teams client, in Admin Center, as well as our web client.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Christian. And if there are any last questions here, we can probably take those. If not, these are all the other different sessions we have. So highly recommend you to check out these related sessions at Build. And don't forget to join the M365 developer program. With that, thanks a lot, everyone, for joining this fantastic Ask the Expert questions. Feel free to reach out to us later on if you have any additional follow-up questions for us. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.